Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is my Toro zero-turn mower. It's a Timecutter SS5000. Ooh, big deal. Put it away last fall and wanted to use it this spring. Pulled it out and won't start. And no, it's not actually bad gas for once. This time it's not cranking and it's doing something a little weird. So the other thing I do with this is I take this battery out of it in the fall and I bring it indoors into the basement. The basement is not fully heated, but it's definitely a lot warmer than outside, so the battery won't freeze and get damaged. That particular battery has a sticker of May of 2021. So right now that battery is about 3 years old. Batteries don't last like they used to. That's a Napa lawn and garden battery. They're decent, I guess, but they don't seem to be as good as they used to. But I charged it and that's not the problem. I've got the boost pack on it now because I ran the battery down, but let me just show you what it's doing. So I put the boost pack on, turn the key to the on position, and we make sure that the levers are in park, otherwise it won't do anything. So we've got the machine gun Kelly effect here, and pretty sure what you're hearing right there is this starter solenoid chattering. Yeah, definitely can feel it. So more than likely we've either got a bad solenoid. Now low voltage can cause that too, so if you got a dead battery, but you hear how loud that's chattering. So I already took a wrench and went right across these two poles, and it arcs to the wrench and makes nice big burn marks on my wrench, and the starter does nothing. So that's why I think what I've got is a seized starter, which would make sense because this particular model has the easy seize starter as a option, and I probably, previous owner I bought this used, he probably opted for the easy seize starter. All kidding aside, this starter has seized on me before, and previously I believe the problem was the Mises, because see how I've got this shroud off? I didn't just take that off just now. I kept that off like that all winter, and the reason why is because in previous seasons, or a previous season, I discovered the very unfortunate situation where mice would build a nest underneath this cover up on top of here, and they would pee and poop all over this area. And one of the areas that they peed and pooped the heck out of was the top of the starter. So there's the top of the starter. There's the small little pinion gear mechanism, which is called a Bendix mechanism. It's basically, it's got a spiral grooved shaft underneath it that the thing runs in, so that by design what will happen is when you crank the starter, when the starter motor starts spinning quickly, that will cause this to turn on the barber pole and move up and cause these teeth to engage the flywheel teeth. And then once the engine starts, this will, the starter motor stops turning, and then this will spin down and go back down, and so disengage the starter motor from the running engine. You can actually see all the corrosion on the top there. That's a lot of that from that poop, mouse poop and pee that was in there that I cleaned out last time. So why do I think it's seized? Well, for one thing, first thing I did was I manually just grabbing the flywheel here. I can turn the engine fairly easily considering the compression this thing's got. So I can discount any problem with the engine being stuck. The pinion gear here is disengaged from the flywheel, but if I turn the pinion gear, okay, all the way to one direction, I should be able to actually turn this shaft on the starter motor, and it doesn't want to move. So that's indication number one that I've got an issue. The other thing is the simplicity of this circuit. Basically you've got this large heavy red cable comes over from the battery positive terminal, goes right to one of the two contacts on the solenoid. The solenoid, for those of you who don't know, is basically a big relay. Low voltage is applied to these two posts right here. If you put 12 volts across these two posts, that energizes an electromagnetic coil, which will slam these, slam copper contacts up against the bottom sides of these two posts and close the circuit. So essentially, a low current 12 volts here energizes a coil, which closes big copper strap across these terminals, allowing the high current to the starter to go. So when I jump this with a wrench, I'm basically sending 12 volts down this heavy wire, straight across these two posts, straight out this heavy wire, which goes right to the starter. So this thing with a good battery should crank. And even with a weak battery, it should try and crank. It shouldn't do absolutely nothing, which is what it's doing now. So I've got to get this starter out. So for starters, pardon the pun, there's a bolt underneath here, and there's a bolt right here. These two bolts will allow me to drop the starter off of the motor. Now, you got to be careful. This is, well, it's not, technically it's not live if the solenoid's not closed, but just for safety's sake, you might want to undo your battery terminal. All right, I already removed the cable off the terminal down here. This is just a 10mm nut, and then these are 12mm bolts here that I'm going to remove now to get that starter out. You know, I just noticed, I just cleaned it off already, but there was a couple little mouse poops on top of the air filter here, and I'm wondering whether or not the mice were back around here even though I had this off. Maybe they were just crawling around here and enjoying their smells from the last time that they decimated this area, and maybe they're still using this as a toilet. Alright, now that I have the starter removed, you can see all of the mouse residue, all the corrosion. So if I crank this all the way this direction, alright, you see that it comes up, basically you can see that little barber pole or spiral cut gear in there. Alright, so when I turn it all the way up here, it gets to a stop point. And if I get to that stop point, I should be able to turn this right now pretty easily, because I'm only turning the stator, or is it the armature? The stator, I don't remember. The rotating part there inside this starter. It's a DC induction motor, and it doesn't want to move at all now. At this point, I've determined that the starter's got a problem, right? So you could just buy a new starter for this thing. You could get, you know, the cheapo Chinese one that aren't that great, or you could go with, like, hopefully what you hope would be a better quality starter from like a Toro dealer or whatever, but I wonder what that would cost. So if you just Google starter for Toro SS5000 Timecutter, a ton of these options come up where you can get this starter for as little as like $43, $42, $43 with free shipping, and then tends to be the more expensive ones tend to run around $90. So you like to think that maybe for 90 bucks you're getting a better quality one, but who knows. And I don't know what they get for this thing at the actual dealership, because at the dealership it becomes a little bit more involved, because they're going to ask you for the spec number of the motor and all that, blah, blah, blah. It's a big motor. It's a 24.5 horsepower. Anyways, so you could just order the new starter and put it in there and be done. But if you think I'm going to just order a new starter and throw it in there without trying to make this one work again, then you must be new to this channel. I had to go find an 8mm socket for these long bolts that hold the starter together. Look at that, a snap-on. Wow, that's probably like one of the only snap-on sockets I own. Anyways, it's an 8mm that I need. Before I take this apart, just for giggles, I'm going to move this out again, and I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab this gear with these pliers gently, just to see whether or not I can get this thing to move. It's moving. Alright, so that's good. It's not completely seized. I know what you're thinking. Oh, why don't you just throw it back on the battery and see if it spins now? Well, trust me, it's still pretty hard to turn, and even if it did break free and start turning, it would sound really bad with all the garbage that's probably inside there causing the problem. So we're just gonna go right into disassembly. Oh, I meant to grab a Sharpie because I wanted to make some witness marks on here so that when I put this back together I can line this all up the same way in case it makes a difference. In case there isn't something else that keys this together. I mean, for instance, I know for a fact that I want to make sure that this post is on this side. So now, let's see whether or not this will. Oh, I would use one of my plastic mallets to whack on this thing and gently hit these. I don't want to break these ears off. Ooh. Oh. Lovely. All right, so I am going to take this little frame deal here. That's interesting how that's bent like that. Why did that happen? So somehow this goes on here and keeps these brushes in, I guess. But this is what I was really going about. Let me get this in my hand. Give this a little tap. That is corrosion. Well, that doesn't look good. This spring just went flying out. That's the spring for this brush. It just came flying out, but where's the spring for this brush? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it went flying right past me. I didn't even see it. Wow, that's not good. Okay, so before they fly off, let's voluntarily remove these other springs. Alright, so now I can take this whole thing off. Boy, I thought this was going to be all rusted. That doesn't look bad at all. Well, that bearing in here doesn't sound so great, although that could be this rubbing. That bearing's a little noisy. That doesn't seem to be what was stopping this from spinning though. I'll tell you what it was. It's this bearing right here. This bearing in the end here is toast. That is a needle roller bearing that I can see down inside there. That hysterically this used to run in. And it's all crunchy. Yeah, that's junk. Looks like it's time for a new starter. So I found a starter on Amazon for 89 bucks that will fit this mower and can be delivered for tomorrow. So I ordered that, but then I just couldn't resist the temptation to see what would happen if I clean this up. So I cleaned that rust out as best as I could, and then I like so still a residue in there, and then I lubed that bearing that's in there, and lo and behold, now when I put it together, it actually spins freely. Yeah, I mean, sure, it doesn't sound great, but I gotta try it. I actually already canceled the order on Amazon because I wanted to cancel it before it was too late to cancel it. Worst case scenario is I've got like 6 hours today to order that and still have it here for tomorrow if I need it. But let's see what happens if I put this back together. So one of the really funny things about this starter is that this little piece that I found that fell out is actually a sliver of this brush right here. You can see it actually broke off. So this brush cracked and it was still working. And this brush is also cracked. You can see a crack in it right there. So I'm just gonna literally put this back together with the cracked piece in there being held captive by the fact that it slides in this trough. It sounds nuts, but I don't think that these cracked brushes have anything to do with the current failure. It's the bearing. So, ooh, damn it. Yeah, this is gonna be a pain in the butt. Well, I finally got that starter back together. I'd be lying if I told you it was easy to get that thing back together. You got the 4 springs on the brushes to deal with. They have a tendency to want to pop out on you, so I'm not going to bolt it all the way in. It grounds against the motor frame, so I think I can just hold it here like this. Should be a good enough ground. I've already got the battery cable hooked up. Let's see what happens. That's a good sign. Let's bolt it in and see if it'll spin the motor. All right. And now that could be the dead battery. Yeah, because that battery's really low. There we go. Probably could stand a prime from not having run since last year. Well, it just goes to show you. Sometimes you think you need a starter and you don't need a starter. I guess that wraps this one up. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.